Okay, so from Swiss guinea pig law, remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going from that to something completely different, like a total 180. Today, we're diving into, well, it's a lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs, and the allegations are really disturbing.
Somewhere between the edge of being alive and feeling dead.
It is definitely a big shift from our last deep dive. And yeah, these accusations are really serious. Definitely deserve our full attention.
For sure. So, okay, here's the situation. This woman, Thalia Graves, she just filed this lawsuit, like just this week. And she's saying that Diddy and his former bodyguard, this guy Joseph Sherman, did some awful things to her. Back in 2001, we're talking about like drugging, assault. She's even saying they filmed it.
It's rough. What really gets to you when you read the lawsuit is how detailed it is. Like, she says that Diddy gave her a drink, and then the next thing she knows, she wakes up in a studio, naked, tied up. She says he raped her, and then Sherman assaulted her too while she was, in and out of it.
God, it's just, I can't even imagine the feeling, the fear, and it gets worse. She claims that when she tried to fight back, Diddy, he smashed her head into a pool table. And it's not just about that night, it's about the impact. It's about the depression, the PTSD, even suicide attempts. Really, really difficult to hear.
Yeah, and then on top of everything else, she says that she just found out about a possible recording of the assault just last November.
Oh my God. After all these years, to even think about that, it's just... But we have to be clear here. These are allegations. We have to let the legal process happen. Everyone involved deserves to be heard.
Absolutely. Due process is so important. These are serious claims that have to be investigated in a court of law.
Exactly. We did reach out for a response, by the way. Diddy hasn't said anything publicly yet, but Sherman, his former bodyguard, he denies everything, calls it a, quote, money grab. Says he doesn't even know Graves. Says he wasn't even working with Diddy back in. So, two very different stories here, right? It'll be up to the courts to figure out the truth.
And this is where things get interesting, legally speaking. Because this case, this isn't the only thing.
What do you mean?
This lawsuit. It's just one of many accusations against Diddy.
Okay, so given how serious these allegations are, we do have to acknowledge that there's a history here. Combs has faced this kind of scrutiny before. So what can you tell us about these other cases?
Well, right now he's got 10 other civil lawsuits going on. And they're about all sorts of things. I mean, it's important to remember that he's innocent until proven guilty, right? But the accusations range from, like, financial stuff to sexual misconduct. It kind of paints a picture,
Wow. Okay, so that definitely adds another layer to all of this. This really disturbing lawsuit from Graves, then Sherman denying everything, and now we're finding out about all these other legal problems for Diddy. So, where do we even start with all of this?
Well, let's look at the lawsuit itself. What's she actually claiming? Graves is using several New York laws, like the Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act.
And what's so important about that specific act?
Right, so that act is important because it basically lets victims go after civil remedies for violence that was, like, because of their gender, which can be harder to prove with, regular assault cases.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the recording, though, the one Graves mentioned? How much could that change things, if it's real?
I mean, that's the big question. If it exists, and if it lines up with what Graves is saying, it could change everything. We're talking really powerful evidence.
Of course, we don't even know what's on it, or even if it exists, so, yeah. Can't really say how it would affect things right now. This is a lot. This is really complicated and really troubling. So before we go on, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge everyone listening. This is a lot to take in. What are you guys thinking? What questions do you have? We want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments, and we'll talk about some of them in our next deep dive.
Don't be shy. Really?
Yeah, it's important to talk about this stuff, even if it's hard. And you're right, this whole thing brings up so many questions, about justice and what it means to be accountable, and just like how much guts it takes for survivors to actually come forward.
It's true. It's easy to focus on the legal stuff, who said what, all of that. But this is about something bigger, right? There are some really important issues here.
Definitely. I mean, this case, it shows how power dynamics can play out in any industry, really, but especially in music. It's something people have been saying for years, right? That people with power, they can take advantage of that. And that it happens. Sometimes.
Yeah, sadly it's true. And look, we can't assume anything about this case, guilty or innocent, none of that. But these power imbalances, they create these situations where abuse is more likely to happen, and where victims might not feel like they can say anything.
Yeah. And it's like, Graves is saying she kept this inside for so long. That fear of speaking out.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that? How does that fear of what might happen, how does that affect people who've been through something like this?
Well, if what she's saying is true, it just shows you how real that fear is. The fear of what will happen if you talk. And that fear is powerful. It can keep people silent for years, decades even. And we want to hear from you guys. What are you thinking about all of this? But let's remember, this is serious. We need to be respectful, empathetic towards everyone involved. Real people, real lives.
For sure. This isn't just a story. It reminds us to be empathetic, to be compassionate. We need to create a world where these things don't happen. So let's change gears a bit. Let's look at some other cases. Maybe that'll give us some more context.
Good idea. What about Harvey Weinstein? Obviously that was film, not music. But there are some similarities, like how the accusations were hidden for years because people were scared. And because of the power dynamics.
Right, you're right. That whole thing, it really shook things up in Hollywood. Got people talking about sexual misconduct, abuse of power. It was huge. And it's interesting, right? Like with Weinstein, there were always rumors about Diddy. But it was only when people started coming forward, even though it was risky for them, that things actually started happening.
Exactly. And that's where systemic change comes in. Holding people accountable, it's essential, but it's not enough. We have to look at the entire system, the systems that allow these imbalances to exist, that let these abuses happen.
Heavy stuff. This whole thing with Diddy, I think it's really got us all thinking. Stuff, you know, but important. We went from the lawsuit itself to all these other things with Diddy to, like, the whole system in music, power and all that. So, for everyone listening, I want to, like, step back for a second, away from all the legal stuff. What can we learn from all of this?
That's a good question. I think one of the most important things is we have to believe survivors. To come forward like that, it's incredibly difficult. They risk so much.
Yeah.
Backlash, people not believing them. We need to make it so that survivors feel safe sharing their stories, so they know they'll be heard, that people care.
Exactly. It's like people hear these things, especially about someone famous, and they want to doubt it, minimize it. But we can't forget, everyone deserves to be heard, believed, especially people who've been through trauma, abuse.
This whole thing with Diddy, it's brought up some really disturbing stuff about the music industry, but it's also got people talking, which is so important, talking about power, accountability, making things safer, so that everyone feels like they can speak up, tell their truth.
Well said. This case, it's not over yet, so we'll definitely keep you all updated. But for now, we want to hear from you. What really stuck with you? What questions do you still have? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next deep dive. We'll be back soon with another story. Until then, keep asking those questions, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.